about online degrees and classes that you can take. If you guys also don't mind, if you're in a place you could turn on your cameras, that would be helpful to me. Not required, but if you could, that would be great. I told last time I was in the general session, I told everyone that I like to see your faces because I like to make jokes, but I got to see how the jokes land, and it's difficult to do that if I can't see any of your faces. But if you're able to, please turn on those cameras and we'll get started. I am also, hey everyone, I'm gonna share my screen right now, and let me know or give me a thumbs up virtually or just on the screen if you can see my PowerPoint presentation. It says online classes and degrees at American universities. As long as everyone can see that, we're gonna get started. So a little bit about me. I mentioned this in the last general session that I had with you guys, but I know we have some new faces. So Jamila did a good introduction. I am a virtual intern for Education USA in the college prep cohort there. So I see a couple of you guys that are in my class. Shout out to Juliet Khan. I see you. Yeah, you're my class. Every Tuesday morning, I do that class for the folks in that club. When I'm not teaching that, I graduated Baylor University in 2019 with a Russian language degree, and I'm currently a online student at Johns Hopkins, in addition to working full-time, doing work for the US government in the United States. I say all that because I'm going to teach about online classes and degrees today. So I do know quite a bit about it because I am an online student right now, both during my time at Baylor and through Johns Hopkins currently. So I'm going to talk about what that looks like today. And hopefully you guys learned something, and feel free to ask questions as we go throughout. So what are we going to talk about today? Why are we going to take, or why do you want to take online classes? So we're going to talk about some of the benefits of classes online. We're going to talk about online classes for non-degree seeking students. So I'm going to talk about the difference between just taking a class online and then what does it look like to actually try to get your entire bachelor's or graduate degree online. And then what to look for in an online program. I'll tell you, I don't want to tell you what programs you should and shouldn't do because that's up to you, but I'm going to give you some things that you want to look out for, things to consider before you choose an online program that may help you in the future and set you up for success. And then if we have time today, we'll talk about the virtual classroom. So Blackboard and Canvas. I talked about this in one of my college class cohort program. And someone actually thought I was talking about a literal Blackboard, but Blackboard is just the name of the program that a lot of American universities use to create like a virtual classroom. So maybe some of you are familiar with like Google Classroom, something similar to that. It's a little bit more developed than Google Classroom, but Blackboard and Canvas are two of the biggest options that American universities use to host their online programs. So I'm going to talk about Blackboard, and then like I said, if we have time, I'm enrolled in a class on Canvas in Johns Hopkins. So I'm going to pull what my current class looks like. We're going to transition over to my Canvas classroom, and I'm just going to walk you through what's involved in that classroom so you can get a real life look of my everyday life online taking classes. So hopefully we'll have enough time in depth to discuss that. Like I said, feel free to ask any questions as we go throughout. Sometimes though, if you ask a question, like for example, if you ask a question about Blackboard or Canvas right now, I may just tell you like, hey, we're going to get there in like 20 minutes and just ask your question then. So if you want to ask a question, feel free to. And then if I don't answer your questions, by the time we get to the end, I'll have some time afterward, 10 to 15 minutes. I'll stay after the class and we can get all your questions answered, or at least can try to. But we're going to get started. And for all of my Tuesday classes, I love to begin with asking a question. So this is for you guys because I like some engagement, just so that I'm not talking the entire time, and also like to hear from you guys. But think about this question. So I got two questions for you today. What are some of the challenges of taking classes online? And then what are some of the benefits of taking classes online? So for some of you who've had to take classes online, either through high school in Uzbekistan and or you've been working at an American university and had to take classes through there, you will be able to answer this question. And for those of you who have not had to take classes online, I'm sure you've heard people talk about it, or at least you can envision what some of the challenges or benefits may be. So if we could get a couple volunteers who want to try answering these two questions, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So I know you guys are in the chat, but if you could actually either turn on your cameras and talk about it, or just talk about it for your classmates, that would be great. So any volunteers? Dulak Khan, always can trust that you'll answer the questions, but if you want to kick it off.
So hello there. Hope you're doing well. So regarding challenges related to taking online classes, I would say the biggest problem is connection problems, as we usually have in our country. During the class, if I sometimes get out of the classroom because of the Wi-Fi or internet connection, this really interrupts my concentration and really harms my overall well-being, overall mood during the class. So yeah, internet connection is the biggest problem. But when it comes to the advantages, I would say there are more advantages than disadvantages. So the biggest of them is you are free to do everything you want. Like in person classes, you may not be able to just sit down or change your position as you want, but during the online classes, it's most important to show your face, and that's it. So yeah, this gives me more freedom to be located.
That's perfect. Thank you, Dulak Khan. And I'm actually going to talk about the benefits. One of them is being like essentially a digital nomad, and you can be anywhere. So minus the internet connection, which I've seen is an issue based on the Tuesday classes, the number of people in the chat who are like, sorry, my connection dropped trying to get back in the class. So yeah, I can see that being an issue, but thank you for answering those questions. Anybody else want to try to give a shot answering these questions? What do you think are some of the challenges of taking classes online? And what are some of the benefits? Aziz John, I think I'm saying your name right. If I'm not, I'm sorry, but if you want to give this a shot.
It was perfect. No, you pronounced it perfectly. So as Dulak Khan mentioned that there are not many challenges, but the biggest one is about connection. And we also had this kind of problems when we had online classes. But benefits, the biggest one that I love, while online class is going, you can easily just go to sleep. Just turn off the camera and go to sleep. I love this part. I think even you also tried this one.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, I don't want to seem like a bad student where I've not, tuned out a class before, but I may or may not have done that. It's your education, so you watch the class as much as you want or
Yes.
don't want to. But I'm not gonna say I haven't done that before. But yeah, okay, that could be a benefit. So maybe not having to, like Dulak Khan said, not having to be as focused in the class and able to like multitask and do other things at once could be a benefit of classes online. Depends on how rigorous the professor is, because he may randomly call on you in class. So maybe you don't want to be sleeping, but yeah, all right, it's a good point. Thank you.
Sometimes the class starts very earlier, so that way you don't have to get up in earlier morning. And some professors record the class as you're doing right now.
Yeah. So fortunately, I get that. Fortunately, all of my classes, I'm going to show you the recording that I have on my Canvas profile. All my professors pre-record their classes, which is great, because that means I can watch it really at any time. So once I'm done with work at like 8 o'clock at night, I can turn on and listen to the professor talk about whatever class he's talking about. But yeah, good point. Thank you. All right, is there anybody else, one more person that wants to try answering these questions? All right, doesn't look like we have any volunteers. That's okay, but thank you for my two people that answered this question. So we're gonna move on to why take classes online. So you guys already hit on some of the benefits. I know there's a lot of words on the screen, so I'm just gonna walk you through it, but geographic flexibility. So if you guys have ever been to the United States or even Europe in general, kind of similar, it's really, really expensive, right? just to purchase like food or like any living expenses in general, the costs are considerably higher than living in Uzbekistan. And that's good because if you can stay in Uzbekistan and take advantage of that cost of living, by all means do that. Besides, I know the internet connections, being a digital nomad, I don't know if you guys have heard that term, it's getting a lot of popularity in the United States, but if you can be a digital nomad, and essentially live in a different location or country and then take advantage of what the US has to offer without the living expenses, by all means, live in Uzbekistan, take the cost of living is far less expensive than the United States, even though, and a lot of times you get the same, quality of goods and services. So take advantage of that. And if you don't have to live in the United States and, pay for the cost of living, then don't by any means. So that geographic flexibility is definitely an advantage for the class overall. Self-pacing options, so you can continue to work while going to school part-time or full-time. So that's kind of the situation that I'm in. As much as I'd love to go to like school full-time, like, somebody's got to put food on the table, like I got to eat. So I got to have a job and pay for food and rent, like in a car to get places. So I work full-time, and then at night I go to school part-time. So that gives me the flexibility that I would not have if I was trying to be on campus during the day. So now I can work and afford things and also get my degree at the same time, and I can afford to pay for that degree. And then advantages of an American degree without the cost. So back to the living expenses, but also typically online degrees from a university, for example, like we'll talk about like Purdue University. Don't know if you guys have ever heard of that school, but big school in the United States. So if you were to attend university at Purdue on campus in the United States, your cost would be like $60,000, and that's not including any cost of living. But if you go online for the year, it might cost like $20,000. So just even differences in cost between the degrees you're getting. And that's not necessarily talking about cost of living. It's just honestly cheaper to pay for a class online than it is to go on campus. So the offset of costs that the schools give you for online versus on campus is considerably different usually. It depends on the school, but usually it's different. So example that I have here is, so I take classes online at Johns Hopkins University. It's a neat little school in Baltimore, Maryland. And Maryland and Baltimore in particular is really, really expensive for cost of living. What I would make for salary wise in Maryland is far less than I would make in Florida, which is where I currently live. So by living in Florida, making a better salary, and it's all around cheaper to live, it saves me a lot of money while I go to classes online at Johns Hopkins, which is located in the state of Maryland. So I save nearly $20,000 alone by just living in Florida and going to school in Maryland online. So some of my classmates are on campus and they're attending the classes in real time. And it's far more expensive for them to do that. But at the end of the day, when we all graduate together, my diploma will say the same thing that their diploma says, which is that I graduated with a master's in international affairs from Johns Hopkins University. And no one's going to know the difference that I was online and they were on campus, but they certainly will, because they will be out of like $20,000 because they decided to live in Maryland. So just an advantage. I know you guys know that because you mentioned it when you were talking about some of the advantages of not having to live in the United States, but just some things to consider of why you take classes online. So any questions about this slide in particular before I move on to talk about non-degree seeking students and what that looks like? Cool. You guys are a little bit quiet today. That's fine. Last class had a ton of questions, but whether there's no questions or questions, I love to answer them. So feel free as we go throughout. So I do want to make note that there's almost essentially two different tracks if you are trying to get either an online degree or you're looking at taking online classes. So there's a difference between an online degree and taking online classes. So what I mean by that is you can take an online class and not be getting a degree. So this is what we call online school for non-degree seekers, meaning you are attending a couple classes online at a university in the United States, but you're not looking to get a full degree from them, whether that's a bachelor's degree and or a master's degree. Now, there's a couple advantages to this we're going to talk about in a little bit. But basically, if you apply to an American university as a non-degree seeker, this means that you will not receive a degree from the school. So if you're ever applying to online for an online university, make sure when you're looking at your application, it may ask you, are you a non-degree seeker? Are you a certificate seeker? Or are you a like bachelor or master's degree seeker? Make sure that you're paying attention to which one you click on your application, because those mean very different things. But when you're looking to be a non-degree seeker, usually the admission threshold is lower for that university. Essentially, that just means if you're required to have certain grades or SAT scores to get into that university as a full degree seeker, you may not be required to have that same high SAT score or those grades if you're a non-degree seeker. Reason being is because those universities, the reason they want you to have really high SAT scores or like TOEFL scores going into their program is because they know, in theory, if you get accepted in their program, you're going to graduate from that school and you're going to get a diploma from that school. And there's a certain thing about quality control for their school. They want to know that if you have their diploma, that means something, that means you are an excellent student and individual. So if you're applying to be a non-degree seeker, they don't really care as much if you've struggled in school and your grades are a little bit lower, because at the end of the day, you're not getting a diploma from their school. So basically, they don't claim you at all as a student. You are a student, but you're not going to be a degree seeker. So why would you want to be a non-degree seeking student? Like, why does this make sense? So there's a couple of reasons you want to be a non-degree seeking student potentially. One, maybe there's just some classes you're interested in that don't really contribute to a degree. So maybe you're interested in like art history and you're like, I want to take a class on art history, but this doesn't go towards my degree or anything. And I heard that this particular school, like the University of Florida, has a really good art history program. So I'm just going to apply to be a non-degree seeker, and I'm going to take 2 art history classes from the University of Florida. Not going to get my degree from the University of Florida. I'm just interested in this class, so I'm going to take these classes through this university. So that's one reason that you would be a non-degree seeking student online for online classes. The second reason is you just want to get classes out of the way at a cheaper cost. So what I mean by that is, for example, I went to Baylor University in Texas. So while I was on campus going to classes full-time as a full-time student at Baylor University, I took classes online. And I took classes online from the community college down the road. It was known as McLennan Community College. I only took 1 or 2 classes a semester doing that. So you may ask, like, why would you be a full-time student at Baylor but take online classes at McLennan Community College? Well, for example, I had to take a world history class for Baylor University. It was just one of the requirements I had. Super easy class, but it was a bit time consuming. And I was like, yeah, this is going to take a lot of time. And it was going to cost me about $8,000 just for that one class at Baylor University. But if I went to McLennan Community College down the road and took their classes online, for a world history class, it was going to cost me $2,000. And it was also substantially easier of a class to do there than at Baylor University. So I took classes online, never actually went to McLennan Community College, never stepped foot on the campus, even though it was like 15 minutes down the road. I did all of my classes online there. And then I transferred those credits over to Baylor University. They recognized those credits. And then I just saved myself like $6,000. By not having to pay to go to Baylor. Now, I still graduated from Baylor University, and if you really picked apart my transcripts, you would see that I have a couple of classes that I transferred over from McLennan Community College. All of those were online as a non-degree seeking student. So that is also an option if you're trying to save money and you take classes online as a non-degree seeking student, and then you transfer those over to the university that you're actually attending in person. If you do end up coming to school in the United States, or even if you're in Uzbekistan and they recognize the credits. Only caveat here is make sure that your school recognizes the credits, because Baylor had like a list of schools for credits that they accepted. So if you took, world history at a random college and Baylor did not recognize that school or the credits from that school, now you've just spent money to get credits that Baylor will not accept as transfer credit. So that was just an example in my case, but also a reason maybe you want to take online classes, just save yourself some money, like to keep more money in your pocket, then go to online school for non-degree seeking students. So most programs, if they have full 4-year degrees online, they'll also have a non-degree seeking option. So pay attention to that. And then non-degree seeking students, you can also have an option to get a certificate. So you've got like 3 levels. I like to think about it. At the lowest level, and I don't mean lowest by like worst level, it's just like the minimum requirements is non-degree seeking students, you're going to take 1 or 2 classes and you're going to transfer those over, or you're just taking them for fun. Your next level is you want to get a certificate from that school. So it's not a diploma. It's not saying that you've graduated with a 4-year degree or you've gotten your master's and done it in 2 years. It's not a diploma. It's a certificate, meaning that you're specialized in a certain skill and that you've been declared so by that school as a non-degree seeking student. So typically, most Americans that would get a certificate like this is they're already, maybe like 5 to 10 years in their careers in the US. And they are looking, their job says, hey, I need you to know Python, which is like computer language, right? Some of you are probably familiar with that. So they will be a non-degree seeking student at a university and they'll take like 3 classes on how to learn Python. And then at the end of that, they'll have a certificate that says, Python. And then they'll be able to take that back to their employer and says, hey, I have a certificate from Johns Hopkins that says I know Python. And they're like, cool, great, you know Python now. Whether you do or not, doesn't really matter at that point. You have that certificate. So non-degree seeking students can receive certificates to say they're basically qualified in a certain skill. And you can do that all online as well. So what I don't want you to confuse non-degree seeking students as that you are going to get a full 4-year degree or a 2-year degree as your master's. So just pay attention when you're applying online for an online university that you're selecting the right box essentially. And they'll make it pretty clear like, hey, this is for non-degree seeking or this is for a full 4-year diploma. So just make sure you are, paying attention as you're applying to schools, because I'd hate for you to be a non-degree seeker and then realize the 2 classes you just took are not going anywhere because you selected non-degree seeking on your application. But is there any questions about online school for non-degree seekers? I'm going to start talking about what it looks like to get a full degree online in a little bit. Is there any questions about non-degree seeking students? Cool. And if you guys put questions in the chat too, I've mentioned it before in other classes, I'm not really good at multitasking. So if you're asking questions in the chat, I ask that you just, say it to the class, just because it's a little difficult for me to talk and manage the chat at the same time. But yeah, again, always feel free to ask questions as we go throughout. So online degree programs. So we just talked about non-degree seekers. And so what do full 4-year or your 2-year graduate programs look like? So there are fully online undergraduate 4-year or your graduate 2-year degrees that are online. If you guys have pen and paper, I would write down this URL. I don't know if you guys will have access to it. But it is Online U. So even if you just Google Online U University list, this website has a great list of schools that are available to you online and what types of programs they have. And it is one of the most comprehensive list of schools that are available in the United States for online services. So definitely when you get the opportunity, just go Google Online U and then, add maybe like online degrees and you should be able to find this. But overall, online degrees can be significantly cheaper, up to 70% less expensive than attending classes on a physical campus. We already talked about that for the reasons why. But again, just another great advantage. So application requirements are generally the same for online and in-person degrees. So you're still, if you're going to go online, you'll still be able to, you'll have to submit like a SAT scores, probably your TOEFL scores, anything that you would if you're going to come physically to the United States and study on a campus. So for example, for me, when I applied to Johns Hopkins. I applied as an online student. I was still required to submit all of my undergraduate transcripts. I had to have 3 letters of recommendation. I had to write 2 argumentative essays. I had to write 1 personal essay, and then I had to submit all of my GRE scores, which is like a graduate exam that you have to take. So someone who is actually applying to be physically on campus and take the same classes that I was also had all of those application requirements as well. So generally the same application requirements if you're looking to get a full online degree as you were if you were on campus. So I know I mentioned earlier for the non-degree seeking students, this doesn't really apply. You'll have like usually less requirements, but if you're actually seeking a full 4-year degree or even a graduate degree from an online university, then you will probably have the same requirements. Kind of in that caveat, talked about Purdue University earlier, but acceptance rates to a university are generally reflected for online as well. So for example, Purdue University, their acceptance rate is sitting around like 67%, I think, for attending in person on campus. That is generally the same acceptance rate for your online school as well, if you decide to do an online version of Purdue University, especially if you're seeking a full 4-year degree from them. And then not all US universities and colleges offer online degrees. So just because you're like, oh man, this school seems really cool, love this school, I'm going to apply to go up to it online. Well, they may not even have an online option. More schools are moving towards that, but some schools, they'll claim that they want to keep the quality of their education high by making you attend on campus. Andrea's personal opinion is that it's a way to have them get more money from you. So they want you to attend on campus because really like you're going to see the same lectures and have the same homework online or on campus. But it's just another way for them to be like, sorry, you have to pay extra money to live on campus. And then we get to, keep all your money. But that's just Andrew's opinion. So not all schools in the United States will have online degrees. So for example, Baylor University, the school that I went to for my undergrad, did not have an online degree. So if you've ever heard of Baylor and you're like, yeah, I want to apply to Baylor, and you want to apply to Baylor and you're like, I'm going to do Baylor online, they do not have an online version of their school. So you will be, if you applied and you send all your application paperwork and you're like, yep, I got accepted, I'm going to start online Baylor, in a couple months, like you're not starting online Baylor because they expect you to be on campus. So just be aware of that when you are applying to the university. They'll usually make it very clear, like, hey, this is for an online degree versus this is, on campus requirement. So just pay attention to that because I'd hate for you guys to, fall in love with a school in the US and you're like, I really want to go here. I'm gonna do it online and I'm gonna have an awesome diploma that says I graduated from the school. And then it turns out they don't have an online option. So just pay attention to that. So it's rare to have, there are still full undergraduate online degrees, but that is less common than having master's degrees online. So back in like the early 2000s, when online degrees became a thing, it started off as master's programs only were online in the US. So it's slowly trickling down to having full undergraduate degrees online as well. But it's pretty standard to have a master's degree completely done online, but not undergraduate. Reason being is because most people that are getting their master's in the United States, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people in the United States that are getting their master's are also working full-time or part-time as well. So that's why they gave you the online option. Undergraduate, you're kind of expected to be a full-time student, which sometimes can be difficult if you have no source of income and your parents are like, sorry, you're on your own, you can pay for it yourself. So sometimes you have to get a job. So that's why now it's undergraduate degrees are a little bit more common to have online, but I would still say you're going to find more graduate programs online than you will undergraduate. But yeah, so just check that application and make sure that you're paying attention, that you're applying to the online version and not the actual campus version, because I'd hate for you to spend all that time and application fee to realize you applied to the wrong program. But any questions about getting degrees online? Know what that looks like. All right, so then we'll move on to what to look for in an online program. So one of the common questions I get, even last general session, I was talking about different graduate programs in the United States, and one of the common questions was always like, well, what's the best one? I want to know the best one so I can go to that one. That's, all on personal opinion, and depending on what, like, USA or, Forbes or whatever list you're looking at that tells you the best colleges, that's up for debate, right? So I don't really like to tell you like, hey, this is the best online program that you guys can go to, or like, this is the worst one, stay away from this. I'm not going to really tell you that, but I am going to tell you things to look out for if you want to get the most out of your degree online. So big key here is accreditation. So there's this whole accreditation system in the United States of basically an accreditation body or organization that validates the school and ensures that they have high teaching and research standards. And that essentially means that your degree is worthwhile. So if an employer looks at your degree from Johns Hopkins, he knows that they're accredited by the Middle States or New England Commission of Higher Education, and that's considered like the gold standard of accreditation. So that employer can trust that your degree online is solid because of the accreditation source. So schools are not going to talk about this because every school will say they are accredited, and every school is accredited. But it depends, you have to ask what the accreditation source is, because some universities create their own accreditation bodies, and then that accreditation body accredits that school. So basically their own university is accrediting their university and saying they're good to go. So it's basically double dipping on the accreditation scale. So you want an independent accreditation body to ensure that your school is up to standards. So I've got a long list of accreditation sources here. You guys can Google this later, but there's 3 types of accreditation. You have your national accreditation. I'm not really going to get into that. Your regional accreditation, and then your programmatic accreditation. So of these 3 in the United States, the gold standard for accreditation bodies is actually considered your regional accreditation, which is kind of confusing because you think if you were nationally accredited, that would be better than being regionally accredited. But in the US, having regional accreditation is considered the gold standard for any accreditation that you're looking for your program. So the list here is like Higher Learning Commission, Accredited Commission for Community and Junior Colleges. It's a list. Some of these schools can be accredited by all of these, accreditation sources, but typically they'll only be accredited by one, and that's based on the geographic location that they're, or the region that they're in. So for example, Baylor University is accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and School Commission. So that is an independent body, a nonprofit independent body whose whole job is to accredit schools in the southern states of the United States and make sure that they are up to a certain standard, so that when students graduate from those universities, that means something. That means that their coursework has been validated. So when you're looking to apply for online schools, look at the accreditation source and then do a little bit of homework on what that accreditation source means. So for example, I think it's like the University of Phoenix, not a bad school, but the University of Phoenix is accredited by like this random accreditation company that's in Arizona, right? And if you actually dig into that accreditation company in Arizona, you'll realize it's owned by the University of Phoenix. So essentially, that accreditation source is owned by the same university that's saying an independent accreditation source has validated all of our coursework. So you can kind of see where it's like, so is it really validated if you create your own company to validate your own program? So again, nothing wrong with that. Like, it's a good school. I know a lot of people have gone there and they've enjoyed their time at, the University of Phoenix. But just be careful when you're looking at accreditation source, because again, every school will tell you they're accredited, but that means very different things. So just pay attention to the accreditation source that you're trying to get your online degree from. And then also check to see if your school is for-profit or a not-for-profit or non-profit university. So what I mean by this, so a not-for-profit or a non-profit university, that doesn't mean it's like, oh, it's free school, right? That's what I thought originally. I was like, oh, free school. No, it means not-for-profit universities, like for example, like Harvard University is a not-for-profit university. So any money that they make off of students, so in tuition, or, you know, if they're living on campus, all that money goes back into the school. So essentially what that means is it's going to pay professor salaries. It's paying for like the new garden on Harvard University campus, right? It's paying for the alumni association. It's that all the money that they're getting from you is going back to the school. So that is considered a not-for-profit university. A for-profit university is they're trying to get money from you because it is a business, meaning that people have invested into that school and they expect a return on investment. So, you know, by investing in that school, they're getting a percentage of the whatever students are attending that school, a percentage of their tuition fees. So yes, some of your tuition fees go to, you know, keep the school open, but the majority of your money will be going to private investors who are trying to make money off of that school. So that is considered a for-profit university. Legally in the United States, schools have to say if they're a for-profit or not-for-profit university. Now, they're not going to put that on their website because they don't want to highlight that. But any online programs, I would just Google like, hey, is this program a for-profit or not-for-profit university? Nothing wrong with going to a for-profit university. It tends to be a little bit more expensive, but a couple things to consider. Because it is a business, what happens to businesses sometimes during like a recession? That's like a rhetorical question, but like businesses go under, right? They like don't succeed. So what happens if you are in the middle of getting your degree from a for-profit university, or you've just gotten your degree from that university, and then that university announces that due to a failing business plan, they no longer exist. And you've just spent all of that money to get a degree from a school that no longer exists. That has happened before in the United States. It's not common, so I don't want you to think that if I get an online degree from the US, like my degree just might not mean anything one day. That's why you want to go for the bigger name schools like Purdue University or University of Florida. Those schools are not going to be, you know, going out of business anytime because they are a not-for-profit university, which means any money they make off of their students attending on campus or online are going back to the university. So they are in no danger of just non-existing one day. So there are universities that will sell you a really cool degree plan, but then they may not exist in a couple of years. Now, if you're just looking to get a quick degree and it meets one of your goals and you just need it to get an initial job, then yeah, sure, go to that university. I'm not telling you not to, just pay attention to the accreditation source and if it's a for-profit or not-for-profit university. Because I don't want you guys to think you're getting a great deal at an online university, and then you realize that that school has closed for business because they're a for-profit university. Not-for-profit universities are far more common than a for-profit university. There's only a handful of for-profit universities out there. So if you're looking at a school, more than likely it's a not-for-profit university, which is good. That's personally, if I were in your shoes, that's the kind of university I would look for. But understanding accreditation and for-profit versus not-for-profit is really, really important. Because at the end of the day, your ability to receive financial aid can be tied to your accreditation of your school, your ability to transfer credits. So in my case, transferring credits from McLennan Community College to Baylor University, all dependent on the accreditation of McLennan Community College. And because Baylor recognized the accreditation source of McLennan Community College, they therefore recognized McLennan Community College as a means that I could get my credits through and then transfer. And then the overall worthwhileness of your degree depends on your program's accreditation. So again, I hate for you guys to be like, yeah, I'm going to go to this really cheap online school. And then you could try to get hired and somebody's like, you went to that university online? That's a joke. And you're like, well, that, you know, $10,000 that I spent wasn't a joke, but, you know, now you've spent some money and you're like, wow, no one thinks this degree is worthwhile. So just pay attention to the accreditation source and the for-profit and not-for-profit university. I don't want to tell you what to do. You know, you could go for a school that has zero accreditation and they go to a for-profit university. It's your money, it's not mine. So you do what you think is best for you. But is there any questions on what to look for in an online program overall?
sorry. So, can we use non-degree certificate as a diploma? What I mean by this, whenever I search for vacancies in some websites like LinkedIn or FlexJobs, most companies require bachelor's or master's degree. So, can I use it as a diploma?
So I say that's dependent on the company that like you're applying for. So like non-degree, like if you got a certificate, some certificates are you'll have to take like 12 classes, and for a full master's program you might have to take 14 classes, right? So you're like just a little bit less than that, that full master's degree. So you're like, yeah, they're basically the same, but a certificate is still very much different than a full 4-year or 2-year master's degree, right? um,
Mm,
so it depends on the company. If the company is like, oh, you got a certificate in international affairs from Johns Hopkins, yeah, that's good. You're great. Um, but if they say master's degree, then they probably mean your full 2-year degree. So that's a question you can like ask the company. But I would also be careful. Like if a certificate is going to get you what you want, and you just need something on file that you've done, beyond your undergraduate degree, or you need a specific skill, then by all means get a certificate. But in general, a certificate is not considered the same as like a diploma for a full degree from that university.
uh, thank you.
Yep.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for your presentation and information. I'm so happy for being with you. And during my applying my master's degree, I had difficulty in finding appropriate linguistic how can I say program. My IELTS degree now 6 from IELTS. However, I want to study in master's degree linguistic program is a with linguistic program. I want to be an English teacher. However, I had difficulty in finding a program for 6. What do you think for this B2 level? Can I study at the master's degree with 100% tuition? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you might have trouble finding an online master's degree in like linguistic studies. You will probably have a lot easier time just finding like an English degree or like an English literature. So I know that at least if you're teaching English in the United States, if you're like an English teacher, like at a high school, university is different because you usually have to go get your PhD. But if you're teaching like an English in a high school, then usually they want you to have your master's degree, and most of those teachers get their master's in like English literature. And they call that like an English degree. So you'll probably have better luck at either finding like an English language degree, but even then, I don't think you're going to find too many English language degrees, and that's only because if it's for a school in the United States, people are like, well, why would you want to know how to speak English? Like we already speak English, right? So there's a whole issues with that statement, but the general idea is that you're probably going to get a degree in English literature versus English language. Now, as part of that degree in English literature, you may have some English language classes as part of that. So it might be like, hey, we're going to learn about English grammar. But that is in relation to, hey, we're learning about English grammar because we're going to read this, 16th century English, like British literature, and they've got some weird grammatical constructs in there. So you need to know like how English grammar has evolved so you can better understand like British literature. So that would be the reason you're taking that English class. But to sum it all up, I would say you're probably not going to find a master's degree in like linguistic studies online. At least you'd probably have better luck at looking for like English literature degrees. And that would be like the equivalent of like studying English for a master's degree. I hope that helps answer your question a little bit.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions about what to look like for an online degree before I move on to Blackboard and Canvas? Cool. And we're gonna have time at the end too, to ask questions. But Blackboard, I'm gonna go through this real fast because I want to show you what my Canvas looks like. If I can navigate to it, might be a little difficult, but we'll try it. So Blackboard and Canvas, think of virtual classrooms. So think of like a Google Classroom if you're more familiar with that, but a little bit more built out. So this is a way for professors to post assignments, lectures, essentially interact with students all through this platform. I will say, even as an undergraduate student attending Baylor University full-time on campus, I still had a Canvas. And the professors, most of my professors require me to submit all of my homework on Canvas, on their online classroom. Even though I attended campus and I attended classes on campus, I was still required to submit all of my homework and stuff online. And email the professors through that way. So even if you attend universities in the United States real time, you're probably going to have Canvas or Blackboard. Canvas has become a little bit more popular than Blackboard. Johns Hopkins just switched me over from Blackboard to Canvas. So I'm going to show you Canvas in a little bit. So yeah, you're going to get used to submitting all of your assignments on Blackboard and or Canvas. Like I said, even if you're attending school in the United States, unless your professor's like been at the university for like 55 years and is super old and doesn't know how to use email. So they ask you to bring in a hard paper copy because that's all they know. Had a couple professors like that. You thought they might like die mid lecture just because they were super old. But yeah, I'm sure you guys have seen like teachers or professors like that before. You're like, man, you've been here a long time. But we're gonna go, I'm gonna see if I can navigate it. So do a new share. And then I am going to try to go to a different screen. Let me know when you guys can see this. It should say dashboard. Does that look, can you guys see that? Perfect.
Sorry
Yes,
for
sure.
interrupting, but I'm not seeing your screen.
You should see it says dashboard, Johns Hopkins University.
Actually, I'm not seeing anything.
I think you got problems with your connection.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I have a
Well,
stable
this is.
connection, but
I'm still going to walk through and talk about it. So hopefully I'll be able to get a good mental picture. As long as a couple people at least can see it, we're gonna press. So this is my dashboard for Canvas, right? I know I've got a lot going on, but we'll try to pay close attention as possible. So I've only got 2 classes on here right now, but that's because I used to be on Blackboard until like 2 semesters ago, and I had like 8 classes on there. Like I could go back and see all the classes I had taken and all the homework I submitted. But because Johns Hopkins transferred me over from Blackboard, all their students moved from Blackboard to Canvas, this is where we're at now. So I've got like 3 classes going on right now. I'm going to show you the one that I'm currently in, and that's historical methods. It's not a fun class. It's a required class. I have to take it. It's really boring, but we all have to take some of those classes sometime. So before, if I was taking like 4 or 5 classes at once, I would log onto Canvas and they would all be present on the screen. So I could just click into whatever class and it'd bring up that virtual classroom. Only going to show you the one that I have right now, and that is my historical methods class. But on this side of the screen right here, this is where I have all of my assignments due. They'll let me know like, hey, here's your upcoming assignments. So that's a good like quick, oh, I've got, a couple assignments due. Some of them I've already completed, but I'm going to go into my historical methods course. And then you can also need to see my grades too, that's fine. But historical methods, it'll be an introduction of like, hey, this is what this course is, so welcome. They'll have the course syllabus listed, the instructor contact information. He's kind of a goofy guy. He's Canadian, so it's whatever. But nothing against Canadians. He just has a very particular sense of humor that I would probably associate with Canadians. But yeah, so a little bit about my professor, and then like technical assistance, like for whatever reason, if I couldn't log into my Canvas or was having trouble, who to contact for help to get my virtual classroom back up and running. So on the left-hand side here, I have all of, and this is for this class in particular, so announcements. Let's see if the professor has any announcements. He just did one. It was a test to make sure that the announcements section were working. So he doesn't have any announcements for me. Course syllabus. If it'll load. Some of this, like, it's weird because every professor will run their virtual classroom differently. Yeah, see, he doesn't have the course syllabus uploaded to where it says course syllabus. He has it located under a different location. So sometimes, like, when I first start my online class, they'll all be on Canvas, but every professor will organize their virtual classroom differently. So cases like this, where you're like, well, where would I go get the course syllabus? In the course syllabus section, and then he doesn't have anything there. And you're like, cool, now I gotta go find the course syllabus that he's put somewhere on this virtual classroom. But going down to modules, so this is everything that I have to do. I'm just gonna scroll through real quick for the next 14 weeks. So this is everything that I have. So I would start here. So this is like the first week of class. He'll tell me like, welcome to historical methods. Bring that up. He tells me a little bit more about the class. And then see, this is where he has the syllabus. Doesn't make any sense, right? Not under the syllabus section, but I can download the syllabus and this will tell me all of the things that I have to do, all of the required readings that I have. So I'm going to skip that because we are getting close on time. So I want to make sure I get through everything. A little bit more about himself. He talks about, you know, some of the stuff that he's worked on before, went to the Royal Military College of Canada. So he talks about his background. And then Canvas resources. So again, if I ever had any trouble, I could go here. Questions and answers. So if I wanted to reach out to the professor, so this person reached out to the professor on here. So just another means of being able to contact the professor. But I'm going to go back to modules because I don't want to show you all of those sections, but I've got an assignment rubric, so it tells me a little bit more about my assignments. In this case, some of my larger assignments that aren't necessarily tied to a specific week are here. So this is like 2 short essays that were super short. I got a 96 out of it, so you know, I can see my grades. And then he put his comments on how I did on this essay, and so I can interact with him that way. But each week I have all of my instructions. So right now, still relatively early on in this class, I'm in module 4. So I would go, you know, let's say it's Sunday night. That's when this class opens. I would go to the introduction and I would log on here, and this would tell me my instructions for the week that I have to accomplish everything. Learning objectives. So he makes it very clear what I have to do for the week. My checklist. And then all the readings that I have to do this week. So I have 2 required readings for this week and some optional readings that he has here. And then I'm going to show you where those readings are. And then the discussion, he gives me 2 discussion questions for the week, and then I have to respond to those 2 discussion questions to other students. So this is what it's looking like this week. It's actually a really short post this week. Sometimes I'll do like up to 2,000 words per post, and I've got to do that like 2 or 3 times a week. This one was only like 500 words for me, so it was like pretty easy. So yeah, so this is what he lists, and he has the deadlines. So I have to submit every Wednesday for 1 paper, submit a response on Thursday, submit another paper on Saturday, submit a response on Sunday. You know, there's like a lot of going on. That's in addition to any like bigger assignments that I have to do that week, and up to including all the readings that I have to do. So it keeps me quite busy throughout the week when I'm not working or talking to you guys. But yeah, so this is an example of everything I have to do for the discussion. Now, for the lecture itself, I will go back to module 4. So he'll have reading and resources. He'll have lectures down here. And if the video course loads, maybe I'll play a little bit of portion for you guys so you guys can hear his voice because he sounds Canadian and it's funny. But see if you guys can hear that. And he's not
Welcome back to Historical Methods. This is Module 4, Art or Science? The Emergence of Modern Historical Studies in the West. Dr. J. Riddler with you back again.
So sounds riveting, doesn't it? It's a great, like, if you're trying to go to sleep at night and play Historical Methods Module 4. But yeah, so he has his entire 57-minute lecture on here, and I can listen to it for the week. And that I need to be able to listen to it before I start doing my post for the week, because he'll ask questions that pertain to the lecture. So you have student engagement that way. And then moving through this a little bit more, my e-reserves. So these are all the books. He had me buy a book from like 1954 that wasn't online, so I had to purchase that one. But very rarely do I purchase books from here because Johns Hopkins has all the books online for me. So these are all the books that I have to read throughout the semester. But if I'm like, I just want this week's reading, I'll go to week 4 and it'll have everything that's available. I'll click on it and tell me to log on, and then I'll log on, and then I will have the reading section that I need for the week. And so I can read through that, and I've got all my readings online. Last portion I'll show you real quick before I'll answer any questions is grades. So everybody wants to know their grades, and he'll put all my grades on here. You can see all my grades. Normally up here, it'll tell you like a percentage of like where you're at. For whatever reason, he's the first professor that's done this. He's disabled that. I don't know why. I'm hoping it's because like maybe he'll give extra credit at the end, but he doesn't want students to know that so I don't know. But normally, if I'm like, ooh, I think I might get a B, but I really want that A. Let me calculate what I need to get an A, and then I can put my what if score, and then up here it'll show my what if score. So I'm like, all right, well, I don't need 100. So what if I get like a 90 on this? Okay, and then normally it would show me up here like you'll get a B, and I'm like, oh, so maybe I need like a 93 or 94. Okay, that's going to get me an A up here for my overall score. So kind of a cool function where you can play around with that. And then for here, he'll put all of his comments for he's one of the more engaging professors. He asked me a lot of questions. But yeah, so that's an example of all of my homework assignments. So pretty early on in this class, but yeah, so I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint. Actually, I'm going to stay here just in case you guys have questions. We're at the end of our class today, but I'm around another 10-15 minutes. So you guys feel free to log off if you have somewhere to be. I want to be respectful of your time, but I am also here to answer questions. So either you guys are good to go, or if you want to ask questions here for the next 15 minutes.
So this one was about Canvas, right?
About what?
This one that you showed about Canvas, and it's all about Canvas and what's inside it. So what about the Blackboard, as you said? It's also the same as Canvas because we also use the Canvas.
Yeah, so Blackboard and Canvas are pretty much the same. It's just like different companies. So the way I like to equate it is, do you guys have like, for soda, do you have like Pepsi, and then do you have like Coke over there as well?
Yes.
So it's like saying like, do you like Pepsi or Coke? I don't know, they taste the same to me, right? That's kind of how like Blackboard and Canvas are. Is that like Pepsi or Coke? Most schools though, like Canvas, I haven't noticed too many differences other than like some of the features will look differently. But some of the, like, I think you can have more virtual classes on Canvas than like Blackboard can hold. So that's why a lot of schools for like bandwidth purposes are moving over to Canvas. But yeah, the only difference is like Pepsi versus Coke. It's really the flavor of the week that you like. But yeah, all of my classes now are on Canvas. So I don't have any courses on Blackboard anymore because usually when schools work with the companies, either like Blackboard or Canvas, they're doing it for all of their online programs. So it's not like you're going to have a professor. It's like, well, I prefer Blackboard. And then your next professor is like, well, I prefer Canvas. So whatever the school is on, either Canvas or Blackboard, that's what the entire school will be on. Any other questions? Dulakan, you got your hand raised.
As you showed a 57-minute video, which is a lesson, I guess. So do those students who are on campus have the same number of lectures, classes as online students do?
Yeah, so in this case, he'll either do one of, like, it depends on the professor. So that professor normally wouldn't teach for like an hour. He would only teach him for like 20 or 30-minute blocks. And the rest of the time would be like discussion time or questions answered. And he'd split that over like 3 times for the week, but it would total that 57-minute presentation. So some professors do it that way if you're physically attending on campus. Other professors, especially for master's programs, they like to teach a class all in one sitting versus your undergraduate where you might have like one class throughout the week, but it's split into 3 sections. So on like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you've got like a 40-minute class for like art history, right? Master's programs tend to keep everything together. The reason they do that is because, again, most of master's students are working, so they don't have time to either go on campus if they're physically located at school Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So if they're attending school on campus, they go like at night or during the day for 1 hour, and they would get their entire block of instruction for the week, but in that 1 hour block. So basically, to answer your question, like, yes, if someone was attending on campus for that lecture, for this professor in particular, he does 1 hour blocks. So that lesson that I showed you is the same lesson they are sitting through on campus, the same PowerPoint presentations they're sitting through. The only difference is I watch it online and they're in person on campus. But yeah, good question.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, well, there's no other questions. I'll turn it back over to you, Jamila, unless you got any other announcements for them. But thank you for your guys' time. I hope you learned something. So thank you for being here today. Oh, Nagora, you raised your hand.
Hello,
Hello.
may I ask some questions?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Is there a limit of age or maximum and minimum age?
For online universities, no. But there are some requirements that may, at the end of the day, reflect like a certain age. For example, like if you're applying to, a graduate program, they may be like, well, they are going to be like, hey, we want to see your undergraduate diploma and your transcripts. Well, unless you started school at like your undergraduate degree at like 12 and graduated when you were 16 and got your bachelor's degree, then sure, maybe you could be like a 16-year-old that's applying to a graduate degree. So there's no age limit. But in general, there's no age limits, but the number of requirements they have on you take a certain amount of time that you'll probably be, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, when you're actually applying to these programs, just because of the requirements they have from you, like graduating high school, if you're trying to go to an undergraduate university online. Yeah, good question. What other questions you got?
Thank you so much.
All right, there's somebody else that has their hand raised, but they don't have a name associated with their profile other than ... So if that's you and you want to ask your question, go ahead.
Good day.
Hi.
Thank you for great conference. And can you tell how we can participate and give us the link of your website?
Oh, in Canvas? You're talking about Canvas, how I got to Canvas?
Can
No,
I
the university's
participate
website.
online? Because
Oh, okay.
I think most of
yeah.
people who here can participate in campus.
Are you talking about the online?
And how much it costs?
Or if you're talking about the online U, where what was it earlier in the presentation, where I mentioned having like a list of universities. If that's the one you're talking about, then you can just Google online U, and it should be able to bring up a list of schools that you can find. So look for something called online U. Does that answer your question?
It's how much it costs approximately?
For the website, it's free. It's just a list of schools, so they don't ask any money from you. But yeah, you can see a list of schools that are available online.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Any other questions?
Thank you so much, Andre. I think it's gonna wrap up this session.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I know that you've been recording this session, so we will post it. So we have the YouTube channel, Education USA Uzbekistan. So we have your session, last session on credit programs there already. So stay tuned. We will make an announcement so you can watch this session again, or just forward it to other and share it with other friends. Thank you so much again, Andrea. Have a good day. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and see you next Thursday.
All right. Thank you, everyone. It's good seeing you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thanks,
time.
everyone.
Thank
Learned something
you.
interesting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.